All right, so we're going to go ahead and talk about how we draw these accidentals. I'll kind of do them in the abstract first, just so we can kind of get a basic sense, and then we'll put them in a bit more context with actual pitches. Okay, so let's start with a sharp, and first let's recognize this really important point. Sharps and hashtags are not the same thing. Really important. The biggest difference is going to kind of be the angle, and I'll show you what I mean here. To write a sharp, I'm going to need two vertical lines that are parallel to each other, okay, and then two lines that cross them at a bit of an angle, angling slightly upward from left to right. Now, that's different than a hashtag. In a hashtag, you have two parallel lines that angle slightly forward, and then the lines that cross them are more horizontal, like that. So it's really a difference of angle, and there's an important reason for that. Let's take a look at it on the staff. If I take a sharp and I make it a sharp for a line note, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that sharp to where the line goes through kind of the middle here. Okay, you see how there's a little line through the box here? The sharp is going to center on that line if the note referred to is a line note. By that same token, if the sharp is for a space note, then we're going to ensure that that space takes up the space of that box in the middle. So not unlike when we were talking about drawing clefs, being really specific about the note that you're indicating, the sharps, and for that matter, the flats and the naturals as well, they each kind of have a point through which the space or the line should travel. Okay, so if I'm taking this note, and of course I don't really know what note it is because there's no clef, but in any event, if this is the note that I'm making sharp, right, then I want to make sure that since it's a line note, that that's reflected in the actual symbol itself. An incorrect or an unclear way of doing it would be to have the note here and then the sharp either higher than it, right? Do you see how there's a space going through here instead of that line? Or lower than it, right? Also unclear. And this is also unclear as well. If I take it here, and the hole's just so big it encompasses a whole bunch of things, right? So we want to make sure that the sharp is centered over the line or the space to which it refers. And so, as I said before, a sharp is not a hashtag. Here's what happens if I write the sharp as if it's a hashtag. Let's say I'll take that same note. I'll erase some of this just for clarity. Okay. I'll take that same note that I was working on and I'll make it a hashtag. So I'll give it kind of the slanted lines here, and then the horizontal ones like that. In this case of the line note, it isn't too unclear, right? But what happens if this becomes a space note? Now watch. Do you see how there's a little bit of lack of clarity here because these cross notes really parallel and in fact kind of overlap with the staff lines? Okay, and that is why we angle sharps the way that we do. So again, when you're drawing your sharp, you want to make sure that you have two vertical lines, and then your cross lines are going to create that box that centers on the space or the line to which the sharp refers. And those cross lines are going to angle slightly upward from left to right. And that's how you write a clear sharp. All right, now let's talk flats. The flats are a bit simpler. It's almost like a stylized letter B, except the kind of bottom bulb of the B slants just a little. Let me show you. Let's say I want to take this note and make it flat. Then I'll do a nice little vertical line, and I'll do kind of a slanted bottom B, sort of like that. Notice as with the sharp, there's kind of this hole here, and that hole should correspond to the note we're referring to. Okay, so if it were a line note, then the flat would be here. Okay, again, if I look in that hole, I've got the flat more or less running straight through the middle of that, and that's how you keep it as clear as possible. So there are the flats. And now natural. In some ways, I guess drawing the natural looks similar to the sharp, except the left and right sides are kind of offset. But honestly, I try not to think that far into it when I'm drawing them. Here's how I draw my naturals. I draw a straight line down, and then I do a slightly upward angle, but a shorter one. And then I kind of flip that top to bottom and kind of have them intersect. So I'll do a shorter one up here and then a straight line going down. Notice again that these cross lines, so to speak, are at an angle. And that's for the same reason we did that on the sharp, because if we're referring to a space note, then we want those crossing lines not to be confused with the staff line. So that the one I've just drawn here would be a natural that would correspond to a space note. Notice again, we've got a box here, and that space is clearly indicating that line here, this note here. And here's an example of a natural that would correspond to a line note. All right, let's talk double sharps and double flats. So double flats are probably the easiest ones. You simply take that flat symbol, in this case I'm referring to a line note, and you draw it twice. That's it. As for the double sharps is kind of a funky looking thing. It's almost like this X with bold corners. Okay, so there's kind of my attempt at a double sharp for a line note. And here's how I would draw it for a space note. Okay, if you don't want it to look quite so detailed, that's fine. You can just do an X in your handwriting. Okay, an X. All right, so that's double flats and double sharps.